Delaware County 911, what's the address of your emergency?
Oh.
Hello?
I'm on the road. I'm out of breath.
Okay. What's going on, sir?
My wife, she's not responsive. I don't know if she's hit. I don't know. She's halfway out the door. I sent my son over to check on her. He's yelling at me, and she looks gone.
Okay. We'll get an ambulance for in just a second.
November 10th, 2018 was finally the day that Amy's husband of over 14 years was going to carry out his plan. A plan he carefully waited to carry out until he felt like he had the perfect opportunity. The defendant made sure the only people at his farm that day were him, his wife, and his kids, because he didn't want any other witnesses. He had gotten Amy outside to help do chores on the farm, and then he had to separate her so he could execute his plan.
So I spoke to Dr. Thompson, and he also informed me there was a woman who had been impaled with a rake, and he expressed concern for the amount of injuries she showed, both blunt force injuries as well as 6 puncture wounds on her back when the corn rake had 4 tines in it.
The corn rake had 4 tines. Amy Mullis had 6 puncture wounds in her back. That gap, 2 wounds the tool could not account for from a single fall, is where the prosecution built its case against Todd Mullis. And once you understand the full picture investigators assembled around that one forensic fact, the distance between farming accident and first-degree murder becomes considerably harder to explain away. The search history on the family's iPad. The words Amy had been saying to the people around her for months. What one of her closest friends told her face-to-face. A warning that, in hindsight, turned out to be exact. What their 13-year-old son found in a red shed on a November morning. What Todd said on the 911 call while performing CPR on his dying wife. And why, in June 2026, nearly 8 years after Amy's death, an Iowa judge still had to issue a 53-page ruling on whether the right verdict had been reached. Todd and Amy Mullis met at the Delaware County Fair in 2003 and married in 2004. They built their life on a farming operation near Earlville, Iowa, multiple properties, large hog barns, an enterprise worth millions that people in the area recognized as the product of years of deliberate work. Amy had trained and worked as a registered nurse before shifting more of her attention toward the farm's daily operations. People who knew her described someone grounded in outdoor life, hunting, fishing, the physical rhythm of working land. The couple had 3 children. The marriage had survived serious trouble before. In 2013, Amy had an affair. Todd and Amy navigated it, reconciled, and stayed together. What the reconciliation cost each of them privately is not something the court record can fully answer. What it does show is that 5 years later, the marriage was in a different kind of difficulty, and the circumstances surrounding it would become central to a homicide investigation. In the spring of 2018, Amy began a relationship with Jerry Frasher, who managed the Mullis hog operation. Frasher testified at trial that the relationship became physical that summer, and that Amy had spoken openly with him about the state of her marriage. He said she described being at home as feeling like being a slave or a hostage. She told him she wanted to leave Todd. She told him she was afraid of what might happen if Todd discovered the affair.
What, if anything, did Amy tell you about her relationship with Todd when you would be with her?
She really didn't say much. We didn't talk about relationships much, other than I know she wasn't happy.
Did she tell you how Todd treated her?
She made different notes, or not notes, but said she felt like a slave or a hostage around there.
Now, did Amy ever tell you whether or not she was planning on leaving Todd?
She said she was wanting to.
The words Frasher recalled most precisely were these.
Did you and Amy ever have any conversations about what Todd would do if he found out she was having an affair?
One time she did say that if he ever found out, she would disappear.
She was telling other people the same thing in different terms. A co-worker named Deborah Sherbring testified that Amy had reached out to her in visible distress. A friend named Patricia Christofferson told the court that Amy had been specific about what a divorce would cost Todd. He would lose half of everything, Amy said, and in the community where they lived, That outcome was socially unacceptable. Amy's brother testified that his sister had told him her plan. She would wait until the harvest was finished, then file for divorce. And then there was the warning. After Amy disclosed the affair to another friend, that friend looked at her and said something the courtroom heard years later. Todd is going to kill you, because Todd is just the person you don't mess with. Amy kept moving through her days. She kept waiting for the harvest to end. Jerry Frasher was investigated and cleared. GPS records and cell phone data placed him nowhere near the Mullis farm on November 10, 2018. His wife was investigated and cleared, as well. The affair had given investigators a context for the marriage. It had not given them an alternative suspect, and so the investigation returned, again and again, to the farm itself. November 10, 2018, was a working morning on the Mullis property. Todd, Amy, and their 13-year-old son Tristan were in one of the hog barns, preparing for a delivery of piglets. Tristan was carrying portable heaters. Todd was setting up watering equipment. Amy was cleaning the lights. At some point during the morning, Amy told Tristan she was getting dizzy. She had undergone an outpatient medical procedure 4 days earlier, on November 6th, and hadn't fully recovered. Todd suggested she stop working and go rest inside. Before she walked back to the house, he asked her to stop by the red shed nearby and retrieve a pet carrier. He needed it to move a litter of kittens before heavy machinery came onto the property later that day. Amy walked toward the shed. When she hadn't returned after some time, Tristan went to look for her. He found his mother in a crouched position in the doorway of the red shed, a corn rake embedded in her back. Todd pulled the rake from Amy's body. He and Tristan loaded her into the front seat of the truck. She was placed across Tristan's lap while she was bleeding, and Todd drove toward medical care, calling 911 as he went.
Emergency ringing?
Hello?
I'm on the road. I'm out of breath.
Okay. What's going on, sir?
My wife, she's not responsive. I don't know if she tripped. I don't know. She was halfway out the door. I sent my son over to check on her. He yelled at me, and she looks gone.
Okay. We'll get an ambulance for him. Just a second.
The dispatcher told him to stop and wait for first responders. He pulled over. Emergency services transported Amy to the hospital. She died from her injuries. Todd told investigators exactly what he told the 911 operator. Amy had been unsteady all morning. She must have fallen. The state medical examiner, Dr. Kelly Cruz, examined the body and the implement. The corn rake had 4 tines. Amy had 6 puncture wounds in her back. 2 of the wounds entered the body angled upward. 4 entered moving downward. Dr. Cruz testified at trial that Amy had been impaled by the rake at least twice, possibly 3 times. A single fall onto the tool could not produce wounds traveling in 2 opposing directions from one impact. The emergency room physician who first treated Amy had already questioned the accident account before the autopsy was completed.
Doctor, I'm showing you State's Exhibit number 51. What's in this photograph?
So this is a close-up photograph of Miss Mullis's ear. On the top part of the ear, there's an abrasion or a scrape, and also on the earlobe and in front of the ear, we see more contusions or bruises. She also had contusions and bruises behind the ear as well.
Were you able to get a photograph of the contusions and abrasions and behind this ear?
No, we did not have a photograph behind the ear.
And you indicated those were those abrasions or contusions behind?
There were contusions behind the ear. She had earrings in when she came to our office, so it's reasonable to consider that her earrings hitting her ear or the back of her head could have caused that bruising.
Now I'll show you State's Exhibit number 52. What is this a photograph of?
This is more far away photograph of the top half of Miss Mullis after she was cleaned and her medical therapy was removed. We can again see that blunt force injury on the face, on the lips, on the side of the jaw, and now we can see more injury on her upper chest and the top of her right breast. There's a bit of asymmetry to her breast because her right breast implant was injured during one of the penetrating wounds that entered her back.
Now I'll show you State's Exhibit 53. Is this a close-up of her chest area?
Correct. This is a close-up of the chest, highlighting those abrasions and those contusions or bruises that were on her chest and the top part of her breast.
And can you tell what these injuries are on her chest or where they came from?
So they again indicate some sort of blunt force injury. It could be during some sort of struggle, really any sort of impact with a blunt object. I can't say with absolute certainty where they came from, but they are a blunt force injury.
Doctor, I'll show you State's Exhibit number 54. What is this a photograph of?
So this is a close-up photograph of Miss Mullis's right hand. She has a number of abrasions or scrapes and contusions and bruises on the back part of her hand and in the knuckle region.
And State's Exhibit number 55.
This is a close-up photograph of her left hand. She has a few more of these abrasions or scrapes and also some bruising as well on the back side of her hand in the knuckle region. These could potentially reflect defensive type wounds from a struggle.
And State's Exhibit number 56. What is this a photograph of?
This is a close-up photograph of Miss Mullis's right knee. She again has more abrasions and contusions on the right knee.
When the full examination concluded, Amy's manner of death was officially ruled homicide. The initial accident determination was revised in December 2018. Prosecutors argued that the timing of Amy's medical procedure was not incidental. Todd had known Amy was unsteady. He had created conditions under which an investigator's instinct, an unwell woman who lost her footing on farm equipment, would seem entirely plausible. And he had positioned their son to discover the body rather than finding it himself. Then there was the 911 call. As Todd performed chest compressions during the call, the prosecution claimed he could be heard whispering something into the phone. The state played the audio for the jury multiple times.
So on November 10th, 2018, when this happens to Amy, you're not at all suspicious that she's cheating.
That she's cheating, no.
At that point, you don't have one worry that she's cheating.
No.
And when you're actually there giving her CPR and you're giving those chest compressions, all you're thinking about is your wife, right?
Yes.
You're thinking about how you're trying to save her life.
Yes.
And you're thinking you're doing everything, because I think you even say on the 911 tape, I'll do anything, right?
When they asked me to do CPR, I said I'll do whatever will help her.
And you mean that? You'll do anything at that point to help save your wife.
Yes.
And you start those chest compressions, right?
Yes.
And you heard that tape when we played it the other day, right?
Yes.
And at that point, what are you thinking when you're doing that?
Trying to get her to come back.
You're just trying to save her,
Yes.
right? Todd, while you're doing those, I know it was kind of hard to hear on that tape, but you're doing those chest compressions. How long do you think you're doing them for?
Not very long. Minute or two.
And then I think it's Deputy Thompson shows up, and then
Yes.
Does he take over or somebody else takes over?
He started.
Okay. Your Honor, at this time, can I publish a clip of the 911 tape?
Yes, go ahead.
And just for the record, Judge, this is State's Exhibit number 2. Now, Todd, here I'm gonna play you the part where you're doing the chest compressions, and I'm just gonna ask that you listen in between the chest compressions, okay? Now, Todd, did you just hear that whisper at the end of that?
Yes.
And what did you whisper?
I couldn't hear it.
Okay, I'm gonna play it again. Todd, do you whisper cheating whore right there?
No.
So you don't remember what you whispered?
No.
Okay, I'm gonna play another clip for you. Do you know what you whispered there?
No.
Did you hear that? So I'm going to play that part one more time. The first clip is 6:53 of that second tape, and this second one is right at 0700. Just try to listen really closely. I just want to know if you remember what you said. Right there, do you say go to hell, cheating whore?
No.
Todd denied it from the stand. He said he didn't know what he had said. His attorney told the jury that the audio was muffled breathing, that Todd was out of breath from CPR and had said, "She's cold." The Iowa Court of Appeals reviewed the recording as part of the 2022 appeal and noted it was in evidence, that what was audible was consistent with what the prosecution attributed to it, and that the jury had been entitled to listen and draw their own conclusion. The family had an iPad. It was a shared device. Todd testified that Amy had the password and used it regularly for household bills and price quotes, and that the children used it as well. None of that was disputed. What was disputed was who had made a specific series of searches in the months before Amy's death. On that device, investigators found searches for killing unfaithful women, for crimes of passion, for what happened to cheating spouses in historic Aztec tribes, for did ancient cultures kill adulterers, for thrill of the kill. On November 6th, 4 days before Amy died, the same day she had her medical procedure, someone had searched the device for human organs and their locations inside the body. In January 2018, 10 months before Amy's death, someone had searched for how to conduct a DNA paternity test on a person without their knowledge or consent. Todd denied making any of those searches when he testified. He said he couldn't account for who had. He suggested some searches might be connected to history programs he and Amy had watched together. The defense raised the same argument to the jury. Multiple people had access to the device, and access alone couldn't establish who had typed any particular query. It was a legitimate evidentiary point. The Iowa Court of Appeals addressed it directly in 2022. The court found that while shared access introduced uncertainty, the content of the searches, their timing in relation to what was happening inside the marriage, and the surrounding evidence gave a jury reasonable grounds for its inference. The appellate court was explicit that reasonable inference is not certainty. It found the inference legally sufficient to support the verdict. The trial was held in September 2019 in Dubuque County, after a change of venue request, moved proceedings away from the community where the Mullis family was known. It lasted 6 days. The defense position, stated from the opening, was unusual. Todd's attorney Gerald Feuerhelm told the jury that Amy Mullis had unquestionably been murdered, but that his client hadn't done it. He did not name a specific alternative suspect. What he challenged was the prosecution's window of opportunity. Tristan had initially told investigators he and his father had been separated for just under 2 minutes before Amy was found. The prosecution argued the timeline allowed for the attack. The defense argued it didn't. Tristan's account of the exact duration became less definitive when revisited. Todd took the stand in his own defense. He denied killing Amy. He said she had fallen. He said the searches were not his. He said the investigation had identified him as the suspect from the beginning and had never seriously looked in any other direction. The prosecution's closing told the jury that Todd Mullis had thought about killing his wife for years. That framing was the lens through which they asked jurors to view every piece of evidence: the iPad, the timing, the wounds, the call. On September 23, 2019, the jury returned its verdict after deliberating for approximately 7.5 hours across 2 days.
Okay, this is the state of Iowa versus Todd Michael Mullis, Delaware County case FECR 012941. We, the jury, find the defendant, Todd Michael Mullis, guilty of the crime of murder in the first degree, signed by the jury foreperson.
Todd grimaced when the verdict was read and shook his head. He was shackled in the courtroom and taken into custody immediately. At formal sentencing, Iowa law left no room for the judge's discretion: life in prison without the possibility of parole. He was also ordered to pay $150,000 in victim restitution. Before sentencing, Todd addressed the court and told the judge he did not believe he had received a fair trial. His attorneys announced plans to appeal. 3 children were now living in a world where their mother was gone and their father was going to die in prison. The Iowa Court of Appeals ruled in 2022. It affirmed the conviction across every ground Todd's legal team had raised, finding the evidence sufficient to support the jury's verdict, rejecting his request for a new trial, upholding what had been decided in September 2019. The conviction stood. In early 2025, Todd Mullis returned to court in Delaware County for a post-conviction relief hearing before Judge Laura Parrish. His new attorneys had compiled more than 100 separate claims, all built around the argument that his original trial counsel had failed him in constitutionally significant ways. The hearing spanned multiple days. 11 witnesses testified live, 28 others gave testimony by deposition. Court TV broadcast portions of the proceedings. What surfaced during that hearing was a conflict that had existed, quietly, from the beginning. Todd had always maintained that Amy's death was an accident, but his trial attorney, Gerald Feyerhelm, had told the jury in his opening statement that Amy was murdered, just not by his client. Feyerhelm later testified at the 2025 hearing that he had not believed the accidental fall theory was viable, and so he had not presented it. Court documents submitted during the hearing stated the position plainly. From the moment Todd found Amy unconscious in that shed, he had told 911 operators, first responders, law enforcement, and his own attorneys that she must have fallen onto the tines of the corn rake. The documents added a single line that summarized his experience of the entire proceeding. Nobody had listened to him, including his trial counsel. Judge Parrish reviewed that argument and noted something significant. The record from the original trial showed no indication at the time that Todd had objected to the strategy his attorney was pursuing. That absence carried legal weight. Among the witnesses at the hearing was Dr. Jennifer Hammers, a forensic pathologist retained by the defense. Dr. Hammers reviewed the same autopsy findings and wound pattern the jury had heard in 2019. She reached a different interpretation. She testified that Amy could have fallen onto the rake, producing 4 of the puncture wounds, and then received the remaining 2 when she unsuccessfully attempted to free herself from the implement, falling against it a second time in the process. A competing forensic reconstruction, not proof that the accident theory was correct. A demonstration that a qualified pathologist could examine identical evidence and arrive at a conclusion the jury had never heard. On June 4, 2026, Judge Parrish issued her ruling. In a 53-page decision, she rejected all 100-plus claims and denied the post-conviction relief request in full. She concluded that Todd Mullis had received a constitutionally adequate trial and that his rights had been fully protected. Iowa's Attorney General, Brenna Bird, announced the ruling publicly, stating that should Mullis appeal again, her office was prepared to defend the verdict. Todd Mullis remains at the Iowa State Penitentiary. His conviction is intact. His life sentence continues. What the full record establishes, across every level of judicial review, Amy Mullis died on November 10, 2018. Her manner of death was ruled homicide. A jury found her husband guilty of first-degree murder. An appellate court upheld that verdict in 2022. A post-conviction court denied relief in June 2026. 4 separate proceedings, and not one outcome that went in Todd Mullis's direction. What has remained genuinely contested is a narrower set of questions. Whether the wound pattern definitively rules out an accidental fall, or only makes one statistically difficult to accept. Whether the iPad searches can be attributed to one person in a household where multiple people had access. Whether a trial attorney's decision to argue murder by a third party, rather than accident, cost his client the only defense that matched what Todd himself had said from the very beginning. Amy Mullis had told her coworker she was afraid. She had told her brother when she planned to leave. She had told the man she was seeing what would happen if Todd ever found out. A friend who knew both of them had looked her in the eyes and described exactly what she believed Todd was capable of. Amy kept her plans. She kept waiting for the harvest to end. She was 39 years old. She had 3 children. She walked into that red shed on a November morning expecting to walk back out of it. The farm in Earlville is still there. And 3 children have grown up carrying the consequence of a mourning that no verdict, however many times affirmed, can ever fully account for.